Force, coming out of hiding to present you with another rant. This time, we're going to be taking a look at one of the darker corners of the internet. It is here that we find a disgusting cesspool filled to the brim with countless individuals that are the banes of our existence, and are the epitome of everything wrong with humanity. It's incels. Yeah, I know it's kind of a semi-dead topic at this point, but there's been some recent activity within the community that I'd like to tackle. Plus, I've wanted to rant on them for quite some time. With that out of the way, let's begin. For those who don't know what an incel is, let me give you some background. Incel is a combination of the words involuntary and celibate. Incels have been around the internet for quite some time, but after the Isla Vista attack initiated by the infamous Elliot Rodger, who also identified as an incel, they finally got mass media attention, and from there it just got worse and worse over the past few years. So what do incels do exactly? Well, given the definition from earlier, incels like to argue that the reason they're virgins or never had a girlfriend is due to factors out of their control, such as society perpetuating women to only seek out a certain type of man, the tall, dark, and handsome type with a big dick. Another thing they like to do is rant about how much they hate women because of some arbitrary reason, like women are superficial, or women care more about riding the cock carousel than settling down with good men, and so on. They're kind of like nice guys, but way more extreme. Most, if not every, incel likes to claim the reason women don't want them is because they're physically unattractive. I've seen pictures of a few incels and they honestly don't physically repulse me. They just look like your everyday average Joes. Granted, most of them might not be able to attract enough girls to build their own harem, but they definitely could attract one with enough effort. No, the actual reason they can't get women is because they're toxic people. They spread misogyny, sexism, racism, homophobia, and possibly transphobia, and they condone the idea of mass genocide against women or taking their rights away. Hell, they don't even call them women or even females like some nice guys do. They'll call them either Stacies, Femoids, or Roasties. I've even seen a few of them advocate to commit rape, incest, pedophilia, and necrophilia. Now let's take a look at the Braincels subreddit and Incels.me so you can get a good idea of how bad incels can get. I'll also be showcasing from posts from the IncelTears subreddit, which isn't an incel community forum, but rather a forum observing and providing screen caps of their behavior and having discussions about the community. First on the chopping block is Incels.me, but before we get into the meat of it, I just want to show the about page of the website real quick, particularly at the top two and the bottom two questions. Addressing the answers for what does incel mean, is being incel the same as being a virgin, and can women and gay people be incel, this is something you're going to see a lot on any incel forum you go to. These guys constantly perpetuate this victim mentality that they have it so bad that dating or making connections of any kind is so hard for them, and women and gay people have it way easier than they do. Funnily enough, some incels even take a jab at feminists and SJWs for adopting victimhood, but these guys are the biggest self-proclaimed victims you'll see on the internet. And about the therapy thing. Another thing incels spread around is that therapy is a scam and it's not really going to help you. Want proof? Here you go. They don't even have therapy as a solution for incels under the question what would help improve an incel situation. Instead, they suggest plastic surgery and finding a partner. Yes, they ignorantly believe all their problems will go away once they get a girlfriend. And with the bullshit they spew on their forums, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but we'll get into that shortly. But what I'm trying to say is therapy will only help you if you want it to help you. You have to be willing to work through it if you want it to work. One more thing before moving on. Incels have no relation of violence, misogyny, or crimes whatsoever. Who do you expect to believe that? These guys promote that stuff all the time. They practically worship the likes of Elliot Rodger and Alec Minasian for their crimes, and they're especially guilty of talking about how horrible women are and they should die or get raped or whatever. They're not even allowed to join the website. That's gotta be sexist somehow. Anyway, let's move on to the threads. This guy talks about his coworkers hating him for whatever reason. If this really happened, that sucks and I feel bad for him. But keep in mind, incels are also notorious for exaggerating bullshit, or it's just straight up bullshit. So it's best not to believe everything they say without looking into it first. But this guy wishes them all death because they don't want to talk to him. Again, if this is all true, that's awful, but wishing them death is a little extreme. And the guy below the original poster suggests they hate him because he's ugly. This is usually the main scapegoat they use to explain why people in general don't like them, let alone women. That reasoning is absolutely ridiculous. Who just hates someone because they're ugly? If you made a person like that who just hates people for no reason other than their looks, they're the one with the problem, not the person they hate. And there are other incels who suggest to commit murder, one even phrasing it as pulling an ER. Yeah, you guys don't promote committing crimes. Okay. Here's someone asking if 5'7" is too short, and other incels agree that no woman wants to be with a man who is 5'7" or lower. We also have a little bit of racism. Let me give you an anecdotal. I'm 5'8" and gain an inch when I'm wearing shoes. My boyfriend's the same way since we measure pretty similarly. Do I have a problem with it? No. Has it been an issue in the beginning? No. But of course incels wouldn't believe me since a lot of them think all women are liars. This next thread might make some people uncomfortable. It's incest. I'll put up an annotation and also a timestamp for those on mobile so you can skip ahead if you want. Anyway, this guy talks about planning to flirt with his cousin at a family gathering and asks if anyone would try to have sex with their sister or cousin. The guy underneath him says to go for it since it's not illegal or harmful. Sure, I don't think incest is illegal, but to say it's not harmful is just plain ignorance. Fuck this guy. Others say they do it. One mentioned it's better if she looks like jailbait, and one bitched about his one cousin fucking another one instead of him. Yup, there goes my lunch. But despite expressing hatred towards everyone, their greatest enemy is themselves. There are incels who talk about wanting to kill themselves, and others will agree they should do it. Now, I'm not saying all incels do this, because there were a few who told them not to do it, but as far as I'm concerned, the incel community is the only one that encourages its own people to commit suicide. This just goes to show that these guys need serious help. But like I said, only they can decide if they want help. If you try to reason with them, or give them advice, or just plain be nice to them, they'll usually reject it. They want to wallow in their own self-pity and misery. Helping them is practically futile. Very sad. That's pretty much it from Incels.me. Now let's look into the Braincels subreddit. Now this one isn't as extreme and has more memes and shitposting than the typical toxic rhetoric, but you could still find them if you look hard enough. Here's someone who sees no point in hating women despite his position and asks the incels who do, why hate? There were people who agreed that there's no reason to hate all women, but there was also a guy who said he hates them because they never give him a chance. And of course, when the original poster retorts, the other guy retaliated with referring to the argument, not all women, in a facetious way. Here's a funny thing. A lot of incels do generalize all women in a negative way to justify their bitterness. But if someone does that with incels, like saying they're all hateful, they lose their shit and whine, not all incels. So they also have double standards when it suits them best, and it's another way for them to cry about how they're victims and they're being bullied. An incel here says that incels don't promote pedophilia, and everyone who says otherwise is lying. If one of the previous screen caps I showed talking about jailbait was any indication, we know that's a lie. I'm not saying all incels do this, but I've seen some of them condoning pedophilia, and there was even one who even said that girls should be married off to them as young as 12. I couldn't find any recent posts, and they're kind of hard to come by anyway since they get deleted fairly quickly, but I'm certain you can find archives for these kinds of posts on the Wayback Machine in Kiwi Farms. That's it from Braincels. The last place we're going to look is IncelTears. If you want to observe incels in their natural habitat but don't want to visit their forums, look no further than this subreddit. Here's some more racism with a hint of cultural superiority. Here's another post to piss off as much people as possible. This ass clown compares pedophilia to homosexuality. His argument is that they're both sexual orientations that are hardwired in your brain your whole life. He might be right about both of them being something you can't change, but there's still a huge difference between them. Being gay doesn't hurt anybody, whereas pedophilia often does. So fuck this guy too. I like to call this a beginner's guide to being a piece of shit. Some douche canoe took the time out of his day to write down a list of ways you can either make women uncomfortable or piss them off. A lot of women are afraid of being around men they don't know because of shitty, unwanted behavior, and you're not helping. Plus, if you actually do any of these, you're only hurting yourself and making yourself look like an ass. Plus, half of these things on this list could possibly land you in jail. An incel trying clumsily to pretend to be a woman claims that mandatory arranged marriages are the best form of relationships. And I know this is an incel because 1, what women would want this, and 2, what women would want to be on the Braincels subreddit other than to marvel at how horrible some of these guys are. And he also says anyone who isn't a virgin should be executed and women shouldn't be allowed to work. Bodily autonomy and human rights? What are those? There's also something else I'd like to go over. For the past week or so, the people of IncelTears have been talking about this shocking news. The man who made another incel website, which was known as Incelocalypse, which has since been shut down, is running as a candidate for Congress and also admits to being a pedophile and a rapist. When I first heard this, I was like, what the fuck? He must have been dropped on his head on a rock or something, because you have to have severe brain damage to admit that publicly, let alone in an interview for all to see. And anyone who votes for him to be in Congress is just as retarded. I have hope he won't even make it as a nominee, because who the fuck wants this guy to have any kind of power? I mean other than incels, of course. So if he thought incels were bad before, now we have this guy coming out of the woodworks. I don't see this getting any better in all honesty. They're just gonna keep doing anything they can to get the public's attention, whether it's committing mass shootings, running people over with the van, or running for Congress. I feel like the only way this will stop is if the FBI gets involved. But who knows? Only time will tell. That's all I've got to say. This is a Pale Recluse, and I'll see you the next time I decide to come out of hiding.